surfaced every few years, often met with laughter and skepticism.
This for a long time. It is 100% true. A good state championship caliber high school boys team would smoke the best team in the WNBA.
I mean, you're not wrong.
But why is that? Let's break it down. The gap in athleticism between male and female players is well documented. NBA players are, on average, taller, faster, and stronger. For context, A'ja Wilson stands at 6'4", a towering presence in the WNBA. In the NBA, however, 6'4" is the height of guards like Dwyane Wade or Anthony Edwards, players known for their agility and explosive athleticism. Wilson's game, built around post moves and mid-range shooting, would face significant challenges against Hart's quickness, strength, and defensive instincts. WNBA players are incredibly skilled, but the style of play differs significantly. In the NBA, spacing, pace, and physical defense dominate the game. Take shooting as an example. Wilson's three-point percentage is far below what's considered average in the NBA. Against Hart, a player accustomed to guarding elite shooters, her offensive arsenal would likely be neutralized. Let's revisit Cheryl Miller.
Don't call her good, they call her unbelievable.
Miller's been called one of the most dominant forces in high school basketball, male or female.
He's the best, headed away brilliantly by Cheryl Miller.
Well, she's good enough to play with the guys.
By far the best girls basketball player I've ever seen.
Often considered the greatest female basketball player of all time. Even Miller, who dominated women's basketball, couldn't beat her younger brother, Reggie Miller, a future NBA Hall of Famer, when he was just a high school freshman. Cheryl's humbling story is a reminder of the physical and skill-based. Viewer comments from the original podcast reflect this stark reality. "She wouldn't score a point against Hart," one commenter said. Another added, "Even high school players would give her trouble." While harsh, these sentiments highlight a broader issue, the challenge of comparing male and female athletes in sports, where physicality plays a major role. So what's the takeaway here? Is A'ja Wilson delusional for thinking she could beat Josh Hart? Not exactly. Her confidence isn't just about basketball, it's a reflection of the competitive mindset that's driven her success. In fact, many of the greatest have made similarly audacious claims. A double-edged sword. However, such statements can be a double-edged sword. On one hand, they bring attention to the WNBA, a league that's often overshadowed by its male counterpart. On the other, they open the door to harsh criticism and unrealistic comparisons. Comments like, "She couldn't beat Gilbert Arenas' teenage son," and "Stay in your lane, A'ja," show how quickly the narrative can turn negative. Instead of pitting WNBA players against NBA talent, why not celebrate what makes the women's game special? The WNBA is a showcase of skill, strategy, and teamwork. Players like A'ja Wilson are pushing the boundaries of women's basketball, inspiring the next generation of athletes. Still, the question remains, what would happen if A'ja Wilson and Josh Hart played one-on-one? For entertainment's sake, let's imagine Scenario 1, Hart's domination. Hart wins 11-0, showcasing the physical and skill differences that many have highlighted. This result might be predictable, but serves as a reality check for those doubting the NBA's intensity. Scenario 2, a competitive match. Wilson scores a few points, leveraging her basketball IQ and mid-range game. While she ultimately loses, this scenario highlights her adaptability and determination. Scenario 3, the upset. Wilson pulls off the impossible, defeating Hart in a game that shocks the world. While unlikely, this outcome would undoubtedly silence her critics and elevate the WNBA's visibility. At its core, the A'ja Wilson versus Josh Hart debate is about more than basketball. It's a reflection of societal perceptions of gender, competition, and respect in sports. The comments section, a mix of support, criticism, and humor, shows how polarizing these topics can be. So what's the verdict? Could A'ja Wilson hold her own against Josh Hart? The only way to truly settle the debate is to make it happen. Imagine the buzz if the WNBA and NBA set up an exhibition match at All-Star Weekend. Would it silence the skeptics or validate their arguments? Only one way to find out. Until then, the debate rages on. And remember, the next time you hear someone comparing WNBA players to NBA stars, ask yourself, are we celebrating their unique talents or are we setting them up for failure? Let us know in the comments. Who do you think would win and why? The floor is yours. The A'ja Wilson and Josh Hart debate isn't just about basketball. It also shows how female athletes are often treated differently. Even though players like A'ja and Caitlin Clark are amazing at what they do, they still face unfair challenges. From lower pay to less respect, it's clear that women in sports don't always get a fair shot. Let's dive into some real examples of sexism in women's sports and see how these issues affect stars like Caitlin Clark and her teammates. Sexism in women's sports is still a big problem, even as stars like Caitlin Clark change the game. From unfair pay to being treated differently in the media, it's clear that female athletes don't always get the respect they deserve. Today we're talking about 5 shocking examples of sexism in women's sports. You'll see how these issues affect Caitlin Clark and her WNBA teammates. Let's get started. The pay gap in basketball. Let's start with one of the most obvious examples, pay. Caitlin Clark is one of the WNBA's biggest stars. She brings in huge crowds, breaks records, and makes basketball exciting to watch. But even with all this success, her pay is much lower than what male players earn. The numbers. The WNBA's best players, like A'ja Wilson, make about $230,000 a year. In the NBA, the average salary is over $9 million, and even rookies make at least $900,000. Revenue sharing. In the NBA, players get 50% of the league's revenue. In the WNBA, players get less than 25%. This shows that even when women like Caitlin Clark bring a lot of attention to the sport, they aren't paid fairly for their impact. Media coverage isn't equal. Caitlin Clark's amazing performances get shared online, but women's sports don't get as much attention from the media as men's sports. Only 5%. Research shows that women's sports get only 5% of all sports coverage. Even when Clark breaks records, it often gets less attention than a regular NBA game. Unfair labels. The media sometimes uses different words for women. When Clark plays with confidence, she's called cocky or arrogant, but male players with the same attitude are praised as competitive or driven. This lack of attention keeps the WNBA from growing as fast as it could. 3. Fewer sponsorships. Sponsorship deals are another area where women's sports are treated unfairly. Clark's popularity. Caitlin Clark's jersey sales were the highest for a WNBA rookie last year. She also has millions of fans watching her highlights, but her sponsorship deals don't match her popularity. The problem: male athletes often sign huge endorsement deals right away. Female athletes like Clark have to work much harder to prove their value to companies. This makes it harder for female athletes to make money and grow their personal brands. 4. Unequal resources. Even at the professional level, women's teams don't always get the same support as men's teams. Travel problems. NBA teams fly on private jets, while WNBA teams usually have to fly commercial. Caitlin Clark once spoke about how these long flights make it harder to play well. Facilities. NBA players get access to top training centers and recovery tools. WNBA players often have to make do with less, which can hurt their performance and careers. This sends the message that women's sports are less important, even when the players are just as talented. 5. Online harassment. The way female athletes are treated online shows another side of sexism. Clark's experience. After an intense game against Angel Reese, social media exploded. But instead of focusing on their skills, many comments were sexist or racist. Clark was criticised for being too confident, while Reese faced unfair insults about her personality. A bigger problem: many female athletes deal with hateful messages online. These attacks often focus on their looks or their emotions, things male athletes rarely get criticised for. This kind of harassment adds extra stress to players who are already performing at the highest level. These examples don't just hurt individual players, they hold back the entire sport. Lost opportunities. If Caitlin Clark and other WNBA stars had the same pay, media attention, and resources as NBA players, women's basketball could grow even faster. What fans want: fans clearly love women's basketball. Games featuring Clark and other stars often sell out and bring in big TV ratings. The demand is there, but the system isn't keeping up. Fixing these problems isn't just fair, it's smart for the future of the sport. Sexism in women's sports is real, but change is possible. Athletes like Caitlin Clark are leading the way, proving that women's basketball deserves more respect, better pay, and equal treatment. But here's the question: how long will it take for things to change? Which of these examples shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories about the WNBA and women's sports.